I cannot say that one piece of my identity is more important than the other because they collectively work together to influence my presence upon this world as a human being. In this monologue, I will explore both aspects of my gayness and blackness. With that said, I would like to start by arguing that black people are our own worst enemies, that we are our own oppressors, and here's why. Part 1, on being gay. Believe it or not, there was a long period of my life that I felt heterosexual. I actually had feelings of genuine lust and attraction to the opposite sex. Even had relationships with a few and saw extensive futures with some. It was not until I was 13 that I had a dream that changed all that. Yes, a dream. I will not go into detail about what that particular dream entailed, but just think, if a dream makes you feel a certain way about something, you should pursue it. That's exactly what I did. I was beginning to recreate myself into my ideal person. This also started the hardest phase of my life. At the time, I was at an all boys school. I had been well aware of what straight people thought of gay people. They think we are out to get them. They think we want to share intimacy with every male we come across. We are seen as the most disgusting abominations of social beings, at least in the South. This is how we are portrayed. We are stereotyped as aspiring to be like girls in every way possible. That is, with the twitch of our walk, to the increased pitch of my voice, to the flamboyant style, to the excessive use of gestures. I was starting high school and already well accustomed to the maneuvers of bullying. I honestly had no idea that I hadn't seen the worst of what people can actually do with their words. Sitting in the front of class one day, one of my peers yells out, "Look at his faggot ass." Of course, everyone pays their attention to me and begin to laugh. The teacher overlooks the situation as if it's just boys being boys and continues with the lesson. I remember just sitting there, not thinking of anything in particular, just sitting there. I recall all the time I used to walk down the breezeway to go to lunch, listening to my music as loud as I could. I had to isolate myself from the other kids yelling out, "Faggot, gay ass, booty ass nigga, pussy ass nigga, dick in the booty ass nigga, get the fuck with your gay ass." These things were said as I walked by, bothering no one. Anthony, another openly gay friend of mine, and I earned the title the girls of the school. One guy even went as far as calling us his bitches in front of his friends, as if he had ownership of our bodies. Similar to the concept of feminine men in prison, meaning that since there are no women around, feminine men are seen as substitutes to submission by being sodomized, sometimes by force, others by seeking protection. I remember being cornered by a bunch of football players in the courtyard. They formed a complete circle around me as they questioned me. One asked, "Do you really like dick up your ass?" as the others grabbed at my ass as I tried to escape. This one guy ridiculed me on the bus every day for a year straight. All I could do, all I ever did, was look on ignoring him, physically, but not mentally. The same guy confronted me in the office a year later. I was always usually the only student in there because I would gather my work from my teachers and work in the office to avoid being around the other students. He confronted me after his friends left and no one was around but me and asked me, "What's up with you?" This was his way of trying to get at me because he himself was down low. Another guy with his friends bashed me as I walked down the breezeway, calling me names such as girl, sweetie, and babe. I walked faster to get away. He then followed behind me, but without his friends, and asked me for my number. Another time, one of the same football players that cornered me in the courtyard came up to me while I was studying alone in a room after after school. He began groping my body slowly, but with force. I kept pushing away with all I could, yelling, "Stop! Leave me alone." He continued doing it and said, "Don't you like when guys touch you like this?" Fortunately, it stopped when another kid walked in and they started bashing me with their words together. It was the lesser of two evils. These experiences were not limited to my school, unfortunately. One time I was in a store. I was waiting in line. There were many people around. You'd think nothing would happen because there are a bunch of people around. And since there were people around, there was also this strange couple of men. I stood in line on my phone thinking nothing of it. Then one of the guys slid past me and groped my ass. I looked back, and the other guy was looking directly at me with a smirk. I stood there frozen. I didn't know what to do. After my sophomore year in high school, I thought I had myself together. I did for the most part, until my first intimate relationship. Everything started out well until I found out he was cheating on me. I confronted him about it, and all he came up with was lies. Upon our numerous arguments, he bashed me in a similar manner to the kids that ridiculed me throughout my school career, calling me a faggot as if he weren't in a relationship with another man, and other names that would force me to cut off the toxicity from him and the relationship itself. I was on a date with this guy I kind of was into at the time. We were sitting on the beach, kissing, no words said. And out of nowhere, he punched me in the chest. He then asked me, "Are you mad at me?" I was mad. I was angry, but I was also scared. I did nothing. I sat there in silence and thought, why fight back? He brought me home, and I never talked to him again. I found that the worst forms of torment were through my own intimate matters. Of course, when you're in the moment, you feel as if the world around you and your significant other doesn't exist. That is just you and that other person. You want them, you crave them, and that feeling of love, lust, comfort, and security forever. That's all nice in the moment until that other person diminishes your well-being with lies, deceit, and or abuse. They're depriving you of your value, making you feel good, wanted in bed, but worthless on your feet. It's horrible to try and confide yourself into someone because you can put so much thought and love into being with that one person, being happy externally, by revealing your relationship to the world via Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, GroupMe, and whatever other media platform you choose. Only to be fucking demolishing yourself internally, meaning yourself and all the love you thought you had left in you. This is the unfortunate truth of many relationships. We all want to be loved in one way or another, but the truth is we tear ourselves down in search of that. Finding people that are unworthy, undeserving, and giving them the best of you. Although I go into detail about a lot of these harmful experiences, this is just a snippet of what I've been through. Some experiences I forgot, some just too deep and emotional to explore, and overall, too many to keep track of. The lashes of their tongues and the non consensual physical contact made me feel like I was a slave, absent minded, lost, needing direction. Even though I sat and ignored most of these things and seemed to others as if I had my shit straight, had myself together, the truth is, I didn't. There have been times I actually put the kitchen knife to my stomach to drive it through my flesh, but ended up slitting my arms instead because I couldn't fulfill that one duty. That had been nice. I wanted to take the pills and just have an easy way out without feeling it. That had been nights where I've cried my eyes dry. There still are some times. I began asking myself, are they taking their anger out on me to overcome their own suppressed emotions? I honestly don't know. But all of this has changed for me for the better. Now to reflect. Everyone that has played any role in my adolescent abuse was of black descent. Not one person of European descent has inflicted such pain and agony into my spirit. Not one white person has ever called me a faggot, at least not to my face. I don't say this to bash my black community, but to make you all aware that we can be our own oppressors. More importantly, how am I supposed to hate every single white person for their ancestral history? If anything, they're making me feel more comfortable in my skin than my own people. How am I going to support the same community that diminishes my existence? Make me feel like I'm three-fifths of a person. The same people that push me out of my body and make me feel raped, not physically, but mentally. Every time someone touches me, I'm instantly reminded of being alone in that room with that footballer. How can I ever forget those individuals? I can only turn that anger and fury into strength. I don't bring up these experiences to allow you to see me as a victim, but rather to see how I've grown from it and become the person I am today. Thanks to them, my confidence is impenetrable. I keep my head up and I walk with purpose. My smile brightens up people's own struggles and reminds them that there are good people in the world. It is truly unfortunate that the greatest smiles go through the worst pain. So finally, to wrap it up, I would like to say that some are strong enough to pull through and get through being bullied. And I would like to pray for those that took their own lives because of the discontent people have within themselves and choose to inflict it on others. To celebrate the lives that these precious souls have had, I would like to dedicate a moment of silence to pay our respects. I would like to give a special thanks to Joshua Perez, Antonio Nichols, Saul Amezcua, Armando Dunn, and many other heterosexual men of color on this campus for showing me that there are heterosexual men in this world that are kind. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for listening.
All praise to a single mother of three. With all that hard work comes little time that's free. Time to spend with thee. I remember every award ceremony because in a room full of people who loved each other, I was alone. I fought back tears every time. I made a promise. I will never, regardless of any circumstances, make my kids feel what I've had to feel. My grandpa, my grandma, my grandpa, my tío, my tía, and my mom would talk to me in Spanish around the house. I would either answer in English or I would reply in Spanish, intentionally messing up a word or two so that I would be seen as cute and incapable. In order to protect my own ego from scrutiny from those that could wound me the most, I was only crippling myself. Self-sabotage surrounding me. For now, I make mistakes unintentionally. That's what they mean by practice how you would perform. Bad habits are hard to break, and good habits are hard to make. I asked a lot of questions when I was younger. My brother would get annoyed to the point of shouting, "Leave me alone, I don't know the answer." After this continuous response, I began to get annoyed with my own questions. I began to get annoyed with my own sister. 6 years my younger, and your beautiful mind was confined to only what I could tolerate. The questions came, and I gave you the same response given to me, the same response that I grew to loathe. "Leave me alone, I don't know the answer." It's hard to have an idol that demands that you cease to believe in them. Their image of greatness is shattered only by them. For the question was born out of curiosity and the desire to engage with a mind I admired. But I became the same heartbreaker. I looked up to him. I looked down on him. I look up to him. I look down on him. We teach what we learn. Can I be a better brother to you? Very few people know that I came to Bar to become a theater major. Shouldn't you get like a real job? Damn, that's a good point. I wouldn't need. Actor in the moment made me believe that if I were going to do something that I was good at, I wouldn't need to practice, let alone. I shouldn't need to study it. I could just do it because it would be me, and I'm great. I fell in love with the idea of us and tried to spend every second of every breath of every day with you. I wanted us to be forever in the matter of a few days, but I put too much weight on our title. In the end, I was crushed, but I had no one to blame but myself. For I was living in a land of illusion, y cuando te mueres en la mancha, te mueres en la realidad. When you treat life like a game, you only end up getting played. Having sex with women became a competition. For even when I was wrong, I still fucked more bitches than you, though. I counted the women I slept with and saw them as trophies, but I was never taking anything away. Rather, I was giving myself away to other people and leaving little to none for myself. Couldn't improve myself because I hadn't even bothered to spend the time necessary to reflect on what I like to do, who I am, what I wanted to be. I lacked self-attentiveness, self-love. Instead, I clouded my mind with the seductive smoke of sweet marijuana by indulging daily with multiple blunts, bowls, and bong rips. My overuse became routine, and the sad part about abuse is the user is hurt first and foremost. I became trapped in my own smoke rings. As the loop of quitting and using became a cycle, the once sweet high became spicy. Paranoia and anxiety were constant reminders of the repercussions. I'm not against smoking. I'm against the idea of not being able to say no. Knowing myself and the mistakes that I've made, I've come to recognize and address my patterns. I learned to look them in the eye and change them. It can be hard. When you develop a pattern, along comes with it a reputation. Whether that be loner, gringo, quick-tempered, dreamer, stoner, fuckboy, womanizer, barber, or even just a friendly face. I set the standards for people and other people to perceive me. People begin to check for that standard. They interrogate me when I'm not up to par. Anxiety levels were at an all-time high. How's your sprogs? Hey, what you doing after graduation? Are you alright? How can I give an honest answer to everyone that asks? How can I give so much of myself when I'm falling apart with not much ground left to stand on? I can't. And I won't. And you shouldn't have to either. People are rightfully complex and complicated. Don't allow yourself to be confined to a box. Challenge the ideas people have about you, and challenge the ideas that you have about yourself. Thank you.
My name is Ryan. I'm a theater and film major here at Bard, and I've always been a lover of stories. From The Ugly Duckling to King Arthur, I grew up with stories always being read or told to me. And I came to believe that stories are one of the best ways we have, as people, of sharing our life experiences with others. How our audiences take these experiences and what they decide to learn from them is up to them. The job of the storytellers is only to tell their stories as truthfully and as honestly as they possibly can. So let me tell you a story. I come from a very white, affluent part of the world. The town in which I currently live is 93% white, even though it's only 20 miles away from Chicago, which is one of the biggest and most diverse cities in the country. My high school was 86% white, with the largest minority being Asian. And I can count, on my two hands, the number of black people who went to my school. And keep in mind, this was a high school of over 4,000 people. Out of 4,000 people, only this many black people went to the school. And at first, I wasn't very aware of this. Or if I was, I did not give it much thought. To me, a white-ass school in a white-ass suburb was normal. That's what I had grown up with. So at the beginning of high school, race only meant something to me in my life when it had something to do with current events in the news. I remember hearing about Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, and many other young black men and boys who were killed by police. Yet those events were just that, events. There were things I only heard about through the news, and yes, they upset me, but they upset me in the same way it may have upset the news anchor who was reporting those stories. I may have cared about the political issue, but I had no personal attachment to the issue. I did not know the people killed. I did not know their families, and I am not black, so I could not relate to the experience of being black in America. In fact, I barely knew any black people well enough to call them my friends. I was a rich white kid living in a very sheltered community far away from the very real dangers of the real world. The only genuine cares I had were on my classes, my friends, and if my crush liked me back. She didn't. As I got older, however, spent more time in the city, made more friends in Chicago who didn't look or talk like me, paid more attention to issues of race, and had uncomfortable conversations regarding the subject and learned more about the real world and the very racist history of my little suburb, I became increasingly disillusioned with my home. I grew to hate the place. Walking around town, I viewed the sidewalks, the trees, the buildings, and people with a new kind of contempt and anger I had never felt before. I was frustrated. I was disgusted by the affluence, the indulgence, the ignorance, and the mindless carelessness that consumed so many of my classmates, their parents, siblings, and friends. They hadn't learned what I had, and they didn't seem to care about that. They were only concerned with college, their drugs, parties, sex, and maybe a little bit about the world outside. As for myself, I couldn't wait to leave my high school. I couldn't wait to go to college and leave my white-ass suburb and take my own white ass to somewhere less white, so I could distance myself from the privileged white world I was, and forever am, a part of. Something happened at my high school graduation. Our guest speaker, a grad of my school, said that the name of our school, New Trier, would leave us, would never leave us. That no matter where we went, that name, New Trier, would stay with us. Not on my watch. I wanted so desperately to get away from that world, and for the moment, College seemed like the best solution. Little did I realize I was about to enter almost the exact same kind of environment. Except this time, the affluent and indulgent white people tried to make themselves look and feel different by claiming they were liberal and progressive, dressing up like they had no money, and framing themselves as victims of something. Needless to say, I was pissed off. I was pissed off I had come back to the same old shit, and in some ways this shit was worse. At least my classmates back home had some spirit and energy. We had football games, we had basketball games, we had dances, we had the winter festival, and people actually went to these events. Here, I found so little spirit, energy, or love for anything that didn't involve getting drunk, high, or acting depressed, and hiding from life. They had so little respect for themselves, and much less for others. Despite this, however, Bard was still a much more diverse place than where I had come from, and I was exposed to new things I had never heard of before. I had never heard of a BSO before. I had never known about organizations like BIOP or Posse, and I had never danced salsa before, and I put that in quotations because, you know. And I for sure had never been in a place where I could regularly be the only white person in the room, should I search out those places on campus. Within my first few months at Bard, I learned an incredible amount about cultures and people I'd never had the opportunity to learn about in the direct way I could here at Bard. I had conversations and experiences I never could have had back home, and I was loving it. The most important thing I learned, though, without a doubt, is that even though I thought I knew a lot about race, I actually knew very little. Back home, I consider myself super knowledgeable about the subject because, compared to the majority of the people around me, I was. But I had barely learned about issues of racism, isolation, or fear from the people who were actually experiencing those things. I mostly talked about these issues with other knowledgeable white people who also cared about these issues and were claiming to be educated in them because we paid attention to the news and spoke to a couple people of color about them. Upon coming to Bard, to call me ignorant would have been an understatement. I still knew a lot more than a lot of my white classmates, but attending events like the Women of Color Gala, the Posse Plus Retreat, Lasso dinners, or even just sitting and talking with my new friends of color made me realize how little I knew. And at times things were uncomfortable. The thing that made me feel most uncomfortable was often my own insecurity of putting myself into those spaces where someone like myself wasn't normally present. I knew from the start that it was going to seem strange to a lot of people that I was stepping into spaces where a white person was a strange sight. But this uncomfortability came from my own insecurities that made me feel I was intruding in some sort of way. And this feeling only became more and more prevalent as I learned about how my friends of color felt about the white world around them. The more and more I learned about how isolated and angry my friends were, I couldn't help feel strange. Here I was, this white guy, who was basically representative of everything a colonizer would be. White, male, straight, and Christian. Yet here I am spending time in very black and brown spaces. And at times I learned it was best for me to step out of those spaces, and sometimes I learned that the hard way. When I attended the Posse Plus retreat last year, I remember being in one of the small groups talking about biracial identity. I myself am not biracial, but I was curious and wanted to hear about others' experiences. When the larger group came back together and we were asked what we had learned, I stood up and volunteered, saying that while I am not biracial, I learned that people who are biracial sometimes view their identity as a switch between one race and the other. After I finished speaking, someone who was biracial, and therefore had much more authority to speak on the subject than I, stood up, clarified my statement, correcting it to what he had actually said before. It was a small moment, but it made me realize that maybe it was best for me to keep my mouth shut for a little while, and instead of talking about things I didn't know about and had no authority to speak on, I should listen. I felt more self-conscious about my whiteness because I knew that I was at least partly representative of the white world that caused my friends so much pain and frustration. I was afraid that I made them uncomfortable with my being there, and I remember talking to one of my friends at the Black Body Experience, telling her one of my biggest fears is that my friends of color feel they need to change themselves around me, or their behavior around me. This worried me because I didn't want my friends to feel uncomfortable around me, because that's the exact opposite of what a friend is supposed to be. A friend is supposed to make you feel comfortable and safe to be yourself. I remember saying that I preferred if my friends of color told me to leave than change themselves, because I'd rather have them feel comfortable and safe than the opposite. Despite these feelings, however, I continued to spend time with my friends of color, hanging out with them almost exclusively and spending less and less time with my white friends. There was love, companionship, care, and a desire to listen that I hadn't felt before. And despite my uncomfortable feelings, I still felt welcome. And I felt more comfortable being with them than in the very liberal, spoiled, and white environment that was the majority of Bard. In time, the feelings of intrusion began to fade and turn simply into a consciousness that I was different, and that this difference is not bad. Are there times where I feel out of place? Yes, of course. But those times are nowhere near as often as when I feel my stress melt away when I'm with my friends. My day gets instantly better when I see a table full of beautiful, friendly faces, bright smiles, and warm eyes. I feel more happy and at home with my friends than I do anywhere else at Bard. And this is not to say I have this all figured out. I'm still trying to understand myself and where I stand in the world regarding my own race, my views on race, and the fact that I am a white person who elects to spend most of his time with people of color. These are not things that are figured out within a year or two, but instead, it's a journey. It's something that takes many years to figure out, along with a lot of soul searching, tough talks, and humility. I hope that by telling you a piece of my story has helped me to pass on some of my experience. Now it's up to you, the audience, to make of it what you will. My hope, though, is that from this story you better understand how important it is to listen. That is another great lesson I have learned while attending Bard. Listening to others is one of the best ways we have as people of showing how much we value each other, and we must value each other because each of us has something to say. A story to tell that our audience could learn from if they made sure to listen. Now, I'm not saying I'm a model for how white people should be. I've fucked up many times, and I know I will continue to do so. But I do want others to know how important listening is and how much it is needed in today's social and political climate. I hope I see, sooner rather than later, more people step out of their comfort zones and spend time with people who are different from them and take the time to listen and understand. It takes work, and sometimes that work backfires and you get a healthy lesson in humility. But the rewards are priceless. No one can buy friendship or trust. That shit must be earned. And it must be enjoyed, for there are few things, if anything, that is better than a good friend. And that is all I hope I have been to mine. Thank you.
Was painted with light dirt, sun-kissed by heaven's abyss that held the waters and oceans at bay. Brown eyes that could have seen the world grew from seeds of flowers not found here, in this white cold ground that refused to bear me. So my seeds found home in tropical hearts and in rich spice grooves. My flowers budded there into the where that we are now, the same where my thorns grew to know the harsh winters of a paper-colored America. I'm not black, I'm not white. I don't claim this or that. My brown light wasn't given a space to fight. Caught up in the shadow of black light, because here you're either black or white. And I'm not mad at the black community fighting for unity, but yet I don't have that same opportunity, taken over by an angry plight and a fight that isn't mine, yet with the same white battleground. I am that ginger and spice, the ones that drive you to great heights. From the hips of Caribbean girls that white men bend to call exotic, as if I give up my brown sugar to thieving bees belonging to colonies that brought me to my knees. Yet it is from the same bees, made from the same brown hives, like me, that throw away three-dimensional royal queens, from the same royal lineage from which their mothers became the goddess in their dreams. I am from Indian spice and tropical breeze, adding to this campus in their sea a beauty they've never seen. Yet it is hard to be that tree that doesn't fall, when your bark is the only thing holding you up against this white wall. When you're endangered of losing it all, that renders you the perfect you. I am two halves that don't make up a whole, and it's hard to combine into these groups, when you're the percent from the other group. I am part of two cultures that don't harbor the mulch to grow trees to withstand white breeze. Hard when those that look like you don't see you for the whole brown beauty that you are. My struggles as a brown-colored, beautiful aged other is not that I am happy to fight, but that here there is no community for me. I am the one that fits in other box. I'm not Latino, Black, or any other thing. I am me. Something that the red, flashy information packets won't say is that day by day, find that click real quick. Because if you're not colored or half of something, then there is no place here for you. The half community has its broken beauty, forced to assimilate in the colored cradle. I was told that the stage would be given where I could write whatever I chose to, make a space that stabbed thorns into me, a space for me. Yet the funny thing is that I don't know what the fuck to write, because my words are tired of being stomped on. Tired is what I am emotionally for being in a space where my skin color is the only reason as to why I get recognition. Because a poet has to know her words, craft them so that they have the long-lasting effects to redirect points and don'ts. So, I'm doing this for a mother who was ripped apart in order to keep me whole. I'm writing this for a sister who I took hits and broken ribs so that her core would remain whole. But I'm still falling apart. Bard, your 4 letters that tears me apart and will tear me apart for the future 4 years, for which I sold a piece of my soul to, wondering if my ancestors are sugarcane ready whipped, to whip me into seeing what the white has done to them that they are going to do to me. You've come and stolen my blooming time away from me, because where you come from seems to be more of a determinant of where you're going to be than where you are now. So, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But what I do know is that I'm not going to be some girl from Queens who got that one chance go lucky. I'm not going to be some colored charity case paid in retributions. For the people that I've never known, yet I hear their stories resonate all throughout whitewashed history, and museum exhibits for the masses to stare at and appropriate at. So Bard, I'll leave this open-ended for you, as much as you've pried me open. For your 4 letters, and the 4 years that you've claimed that I will inevitably give to you, here are 4 brown girls, fuck yous.
Saul Amezcua, and I thought about killing myself. I hit the lowest and closest point when I was in the Berlin subway. I feel like I've always struggled with depression, but never really knew what to call it until I came abroad. They're always talking about mental health this, mental health that, for which I'm really grateful for, but something I've learned is that it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword because being aware that you have depression, that there are ways to treat it can be amazing, but not being able to pass this privilege on to my friends and family who are struggling with it back home is even more depressing. Mental health is stigmatized, and we all know that. What we don't always know is that where this depression stems from. Mine comes from the pressure and burden of being the first person in my entire family to go to college, the first person in my entire family to have the luxury of leaving North America, and the first person in my entire family to feel what luxury feels like. My friends know I love luxury brands and luxury things, and it's because I grew up not having anything. I told myself I'd make sure I had everything. I wear a lot of gold because it's me, and it's also a reminder of the precious metals that they stole from us when they slaughtered my people. Also because the shit looks nice. It's hard because I know I love these luxury things, but it comes at a stake and at a cost. A stake and cost to the people within and outside the U.S. who have to have their lives ruined just for me to wear these gold chains. When you grow up being bullied for wearing oversized Payless or FUBU shoes and Walmart brand clothing because it's what your mother, your single mother of 3 can only afford, sometimes you don't ever want to go back to that feeling. Kids can say the meanest things about you. But it's funny because we was all broke and in debt, yet making fun of the poorest kid always seemed to make us feel richer inside. It's better to have on the newest kicks and the freshest fit than to have on food in the fridge. That's what I always thought. So when my mother couldn't provide and I was bullied, I got angry. And I channeled it at my family back home. Now I'm questioning why my mommy can't give me these nice things, even though I've always had a roof over my head and a plate of food at the table. I shifted the feeling of frustration and anger at the one person who gave me everything, me, mommy. I was angry at my mother growing up, angry because we couldn't eat out like other people, angry because she couldn't buy me new Jordans that just dropped, angry because we didn't have cable, Wi-Fi, or game system at home, angry because I felt like my friends' parents loved their kids more because they had everything and I didn't. I was a horrible older brother, an even worse son growing up. I was selfish and bitter, and I never thought about anyone but myself. I remember one day in middle school, I had a girlfriend, and it was Valentine's Day. I didn't have any money to get her anything at all, so my mother, being the kind mother she is, gave me her jewelry, one of her perfumes, and some money that she saved up so I can buy this middle school crush a gift. Middle school crush a gift. I never gave my mother anything. I would always break the rules my mama had set for me and be out on the street having her stress and worry. I never thought about what my mother was going through, nor did I care. It wasn't until after I got arrested for the second time that I realized the full extent of the pain I was causing her. My mother broke down in tears and said, ¿Por qué eres como tu papá? Why are you like your father? Mind you, this biological sperm donor raped my mother, forced her to marry him, emotionally and mentally abused her, destroyed her life as well as mine with drug and alcohol abuse. And in my mother's eyes, I was beginning to turn like him. It terrified me. I finally began to turn my life around, received a couple of awards, got into Bard on a full tuition ride, and began to flourish. The relationship with my mother and me has been amazing at Bard. And this is why I think Bard is the greatest blessing bestowed upon me. I should be happy, right? But there's one caveat. I know this is cliche, but with knowledge comes great responsibility. When I became aware of my mental health and my depression, it was also the same day I became aware of my mother's mental health and depression. I was having the best time of my life here at Bard. I met the most amazing people and created some of the deepest relationships I've ever had. But my mother was back home, still working, still struggling financially, and still depressed. My mother has the strongest faith in God I've ever seen in a person. She prays every day and follows his every command. And that's what breaks my heart the most. Dios proveerá. God will provide. Solamente tenemos que orar. We only need to pray. That was all she'll ever say. And that was always her answer. Although I don't doubt that any of that is true, and I don't doubt that although I don't doubt that any of that is true, I do doubt that prayer and God alone will be the only source of help for all mental health. I have the luxury here of seeing a therapist who I don't have to pay for and not have to worry about food or shelter, but my mother doesn't. And that's why when I was in that dirty Berlin subway, waiting for the U-Bahn to arrive, I thought about killing myself. As I saw the headlight of the train approaching, metaphorically I also saw the light of God calling me home, calling me away from the pain and burden of being happy, the burden of being able to experience all this glory and all this privilege I've never been able to encounter, but knowing damn well I didn't deserve it. It was my mother who did. So why was I there, and why was she not there? And why am I such a bad son? I obviously didn't jump because I'm standing here in front of y'all, but there are times I still wish I did. Still times when the stress and burden of my family's hope creeps into my head, praying and hoping to God that one day He will finally be able to provide my mommy with the happiness she deserves. Amen.
I write this as thoughts of things that have happened to me in my life bubble to the surface and make me realize that we, as white people, experience a lot of trauma in our life that we often can push down and will never recall again until we are older. I write this not to be seen as a victim, but to start the healing process of realizing that our own trauma can stick around and manifest in many and ugly, toxic ways if we let it. You must address the things that have happened to us in order to understand why we are the way we are and start the process of healing. I will begin with a timeline of things that have happened to me. Age 5 to 6. My friend and I had a gun held to our heads by some neighborhood boys who somehow got access to their parents' gun and thought it would be funny to scare us. I sometimes see the gun holder's face in my head laughing. Age 8. My mother lost her job and started drinking. Age 10. My mother was extremely drunk one night and invited a stranger to our home. He stole all of our valuables while I slept upstairs. Age 11. Gunfire from a rival gang shot through my bedroom window because they had mistaken me for the guy next door. If I had stood at that window a second longer, I would have died. Age 12. My mother stole the birthday money that I had been saving to support her habit. Age 12. My cousins began to bully me mercilessly, online and in person. They isolated me because they were lighter than me, and when I had told the adults in my family, they did nothing. Age 12 to 13. The first time I was harassed by grown-ass men because I looked grown. One of them followed me all the way to my house. Age 13. I was sexually assaulted in class. A boy who I called my boyfriend shoved his hand down my pants. The teacher saw it and did nothing. Age 14. I was in gym class with a boy I liked who was a sophomore. He came up to me one day, pushed me up against the wall and kissed me. I didn't know what to do. He then texted me later that day and said I was the first girl he ever kissed on the mouth. He was a weird-ass nigga who luckily left me alone after that. Age 16. My mother had lost her job of 5 years because a white man called corporate on her for not laughing at his unfunny joke and said that she was unapproachable. So management fired her. She was depressed and she took it out on me. I remember coming home from work and her threatening to throw me out the house if I didn't help her with money. Imagine coming home from work and being threatened with homelessness. Age 19. I saw my grandmother go into cardiac arrest. I remember when it was over and she was in ICU, the doctor told me it only lasted for 8 minutes, but that shit felt like hours. Age 19. My dad, who has barely been present in my life, offered to drive me from Ohio to Bar. That's 12 hours. I'm gonna say that again so y'all understand. That's 12 hours. During this trip, he was texting and driving and almost swerved and hit a semi, which caused me to ask him to care about him and I's safety. He told me to be quiet and I was being a dramatic female. Now, for those of y'all that know me, the next words that came out my mouth were, I don't know who the fuck you think you talking to. Y'all, that ride was a mess. It's something that I'm still incredibly pissed about today, so I'm going to summarize it from here. In that course of 12 hours, this nigga, the one that helped create me, called me a bitch, told me that twerking is degrading, that black women focus too much on race, and a whole bunch of misogynistic ass shit. I'm 19 going on 20 now, and have been in counseling for about 4 years, on and off. When I first tried to go to counseling, y'all know what my family said, so I want y'all to say this with me. That's that white people shit. Even when I started going to counseling though, I realized that I would never open up about things that happened to me, and I seriously had to reflect on why I was there if I wasn't going to address my trauma. So I addressed it and things got so much clearer for me. Did y'all know that children of alcoholics are more likely to experience symptoms of addiction without actually being addicted to anything? I didn't know that shit either until I started going to counseling. I share my story with y'all today in hopes that it will give others courage to seek out help for the fucked up shit that happens to us in this world. I am so happy that my mother has started going to counseling and is now working on becoming sober. Clap for my mama, y'all. I love my mother, and yes, we've had our problems, but this is the woman who has tried to provide for me for the very best life she could despite dealing with her own trauma. Yes, I still deal with the effects of my trauma today, and I actively work to overcome the anger, the pain, and the guilt that I sometimes feel about the things that have happened to me. I struggle with how to end this monologue, so all I can say is that I'm here, bitch, and it takes a lot to keep a good woman down.
Last year, 3 white women walked out in the middle of my monologue. Let me see if I can break that record. Let's go back to 9/11. 9/11 changed America. White people were so afraid of the land niggas that they forgot about the sand niggas. Now, a lot of you house niggas are scared that I said that. You're gonna get us in trouble. Can't say that. Now it's time for a nigga wake-up call. Nothing I say right now will get you in trouble. I can't get you in trouble, because if you're black, or any person of color in America, you're already in trouble. And what's crazy about 9/11 is the Middle Eastern men responsible were taught how to fly by white people in Florida. Now I bet if 19 niggas tried to learn to fly a plane in Florida, the FBI would be at that flight school in seconds, just banging on the doors. Just what you niggas up to? Now in World War II, when we were fighting on the white man's side, they still didn't want to teach us how to fly. And the Tuskegee Airmen fought real hard for their chance. And then the Tuskegee Airmen ended up being the best pilots during World War II with the highest success rates in their missions. Now, if white people did one good thing for us, that's the fact that they made us tough. There's so much happening in the world right now, and white people just can't handle it. Look at airport security. White people were so mad when the TSA updated its security after 9/11. Like, gosh, sweetie. They asked for my ID more than once. They searched me for no reason. Those dogs are scary. This feels like harassment. Now, niggas, we've been going through this all our lives. They should change the TSA to TNE, the nigga experience. Because TSA ain't nothing but what niggas go through daily in this country in our own neighborhoods. Even on this campus. And while white people are complaining about this for an hour, they're also saying that TSA tactics are unconstitutional. Oh. But white people never think it's unconstitutional when it happens to niggas. The thing is, white people can't stand to be profiled. So now, the white people are doing what white people do, and they're complaining. And what's even crazier is the TSA is listening to the white people and making security, quote, less aggressive. Did you all know, this is a fact, the TSA released an official report saying they would no longer be using pointy-eared dogs because of numerous complaints about them being too intimidating. Now, you know niggas didn't make those complaints about the dogs. We're used to that shit. Because around 60 years ago, every white family had family time and loved to watch those same dogs attack the niggas on the TV. But now that the white people are victims, they're getting rid of the dogs. Ain't that a bitch? I really like those dogs. Now let's talk about the American flag. Betsy Ross ain't do shit. That bitch had slaves. She went to bed at 8. She had a big black Aunt Jemima looking bitch up all night. She was like, Massa, I was up so late I was to see stars. And Betsy was like, well then sew 'em on the flag, bitch, and fry me some chicken. We all know what's up with the flag. Like everything else in this country, niggas are responsible. Now I'm keeping my passion, my blackness, and my views on race. I'm not gonna change them, make them more PC, or make them more white because a few people in this room are uncomfortable. Now, a white student in class asked me once, why do you always bring up race? This is a class on Islam. These are actual things white people say. And, well, my response was, because, Sam, America always brings race into it. Race is our politics, it's our religion, it's our ethics, it's our economics, it's everything. Well, if you hate racism so much, what's up with that word? Why do you always use the N-word so much? You're asking me why I say nigga, Sam? Yeah. Well, look, Sam, I've been a nigga a while now. And when the word mattered, white people didn't care. Now that the word doesn't really mean shit, masses of white people get so offended on our behalf if they hear the word. I love the word nigga. I say nigga 50 times in the morning and 50 times at night. Keeps my teeth white. Nigga has become a term of endearment. It's what you say to your brothers, your friends, and if you're a black woman, or any woman of color, nigga is a term you use to refer to men who ain't shit. Now, I have a small parable. Some of you might have heard it before. A white woman was baking a chocolate cake, and she turned around, and while her back was turned, her son took the cake and put it on his face. He said, look, Mommy, I'm black. She slapped the shit out of that kid. He said, go to your father. Tell him what you said. Said it to his father, and his father beat him with the belt. Said, go to your grandfather and tell him what you said. His grandfather beat him with the switch. Then he went back to his mother, and his mother said, now what have you learned today? He said, I've learned I've only been black for 5 minutes, and I already hate you white motherfuckers. Now, race means everything in America. It really does. And if you have the complexion for the protection, you're set. That's why when I see homeless white men, I cry and I think, damn, what a waste of white skin. Now it's time for another nigga wake-up call, because some niggas need to hear it. If I leave and take all the black with me, that means no more big lips, no more big titties, no more twerking. Everything is gone. Y'all would be some flat-ass, no-rhythm little dick niggas. And Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Dominicans, all niggas too, just niggas that know how to swim. That means that if I leave and take all the black with me, no more bachata, no more merengue, no more Latinx night tonight at 10 at Manor. And Caribbeans, we're no better than American niggas just because the white man dropped us off first. We're still niggas too, like everyone else. That was for that rickety nigga Tim up there. I love you, Tim. Now, you know, when white people owned us, black women breastfed their babies. And then when we were set free, we couldn't even drink from the same damn water fountain. Ain't that a bitch? And when they owned us, the average black man had 12 jobs. Now if a nigga tries to get a job, they're suddenly all gone. White folks used to be so happy. When we were slaves, they were some happy motherfuckers. That's why they're so mad now. See, us being free wasn't part of the plan. Now those white people are crying and full of anger all the time. Like Ryan said, pretending to be depressed. Now they don't say, excuse me. They say you're welcome passive aggressively. They don't move out the way when they should. Door open. They're just sad. Now, I'm not racist. I don't hate white people. Many of you know I love Bruce Chilton and Ken Cooper. But if you don't believe me, I'm going to help the white people out today by giving you a wake-up call. This is a list of things white people can do today if they choose to. Stop avoiding black people. Because niggas are people too. And we're not that bad. Make sure those interactions are productive. I would avoid asking any black woman about their hair. Stop doing hard drugs. We don't like it. Ike and Tina aren't good examples. Now, stop blaming niggas for all your problems. We aren't your problem. Y'all are your own problem. Calm down because y'all are mad as hell for no reason all the time. Stop acting like you're better than niggas. Stop staring at black women and women of color in general. Stop doing weird shower shit. I don't know why so many dorms just, And on top of that, please shower more than every 3 days. I can't stand it. I suggest at least once a day right before bed, though personally I prefer the morning and the evening, but start off slow, this is new. And white women specifically, stop fiending for the pork sausage. We know our shit's good, but calm down. Now, before I go, think about this, really think about it. Did you know that in every state in America, you can be arrested for having stolen property on your property?